Hello, everybody. This is James Diboe, dedicated to original peoples as always. And we got a special guest on straight from the Fiji Islands. He's been on the show before, he's back on again. He's also the Assistant Secretary of the Teachers in Fiji, spreading awareness of indigenous peoples. Plus, it is October, which is you call Black History Month, Original Peoples Month, and we celebrate it every day. Every month is our history. So allow me to bring back Maika Moroca. How you doing, my brother?
All good, James. All good. Last Saturday, we just most of the schools in Fiji had recognized and celebrated the World Teachers Day. It's always on the 5th of October. So last week, most schools were celebrating. Some will be doing their belated celebrations this week. I am a board member of a government school that I was also a student of way back in the early 90s. And the head of the education ministry in Fiji, the permanent secretary for education, had appointed me to the board of that school. So the celebrations for our teachers, which the board has decided to sponsor, will be on the 11th, which is most probably end of this week. Yeah, that's the latest from my end regarding the teachers, because you did mention that I'm the assistant secretary. Yes, I'm the assistant secretary of one of Fiji's biggest teachers union, and I very well advocate on indigenous teachers' rights, indigenous teachers' ethical, business in terms of the execution of their role in Fijian schools, in Fiji schools, and currently I'm more into the indigenous indigenous language, where I really need to see that there is something done to ensure that there is an act promulgation of law to safeguard the indigenous language here in Fiji.
Very important. The indigenous language, the indigenous languages of the world. It's so important to be able to call on, example, if you want to call on your God in your own language. If you want to call on your ancestors in your own language, you want to call on anything, even just the day-to-day speaking with the community, it should be in your own language. Not saying anyone can't learn another language, but to preserve your own language is very important. Now, this has happened worldwide. You could look at the African American, the Africans of the Caribbean. They're being stripped away from their languages, the culture, given slave names as well, English names, Scottish names, Spanish names, Portuguese, French names, plenty of European names, but not their own name. So what I've basically seen in so many years, because a lot of people focus on history of the slave trade, it's always the negativity, but it's so important to know about what your ancestors did and who were your ancestors, prior to the Europeans coming into your lands, example, in the Fiji Islands. Was it the British that first came to the Fiji Islands, or was it Captain Cook? Did Captain Cook come to Fiji? I know we went to Tonga and or the surrounding islands, but did Captain Cook get to Fiji?
Yes, Captain James Cook, I think, was one of the first to discover the Fiji Islands. And when he came here, recorded history tells that the islands was already occupied. I strongly believe that the our ancestors that came from Tanganyika were already here when Captain Cook discovered the islands and put everything on record, because it was during Captain Cook's time that the Fiji Islands was put on record. That there was an island called Fiji, and all those that history attached to it was all done by Captain Cook. Initially, the colonization came in 1874. 1874. That was when the British influence was quite strong here in Fiji. Well, the embassy of the home of the American consul that was on Nukulau was burned down. Was burned down. Nukulau Island is an island in Fiji. Was burned down by a chief um, from the Mburambasanga Confederacy, I believe. I stand to be corrected. I have forgotten the name of this chief, but history tells that he was instrumental in the burning of the home of the American Council, and the Fijian people couldn't pay for that because it was a demand. So that was basically one of the reasons why Fiji was ceded to Great Britain, so that the British had to pay for that debt. And as a result, Fiji was ceded to Great Britain by the High Chiefs of Fiji. And the signing was done on the island of Ovalau, where the first capital of Fiji was established, named Levuka. And there and then, the British influence was part of the history and development of Fiji.
Right, okay. So, like places like Hawaii, example, because I'm aware of like the Pacific Islanders having a connection from ancient times. You're just seafaring people. You just could navigate, through them oceans. So, the time when Americans came to Hawaii and they took over, it's classified as a state of America now. Even though I don't see it as America, I see it as the same as the rest of the Pacific Islands, whether you call them Polynesians, it's in the Pacific, but classified as an American state.
Yeah, it
Now,
was the last,
yeah,
the last state to be considered American, eh?
yeah.
American state.
And you can see how far away. I mean, I went from LA to Hawaii, which was a 5 hour flight. So you can see how far away it is. But do you reckon that'll ever go independent, Hawaii, be able to, or is it too much pressure, especially at the moment where you've got like, you got Asia and America kind of, well, when I say Asia, America, I mean China, America, kind of like in the Pacific areas, and so that's why I was wondering, can you see Hawaii any? Because they really seem in a bad place. They really seem in a bad place.
Well,
Indigenous.
Hawaii is I would see Hawaii as a fortunate island today because of the development that America has done on it.
Yeah.
They being considered as the latest American state. But I don't know much about Hawaii's how the indigenous people of Hawaii have been able to maintain their identity through laws and acts and how really have they been able to safeguard their identity in terms of the law. But as we are here in the Pacific, we've heard so much about Hawaii, and it seems like Hawaiians in the forefront. Just recently there was an arts exhibition. People from everywhere here in the Pacific went across to display their latest artwork and contemporary arts and expressive arts and singing and music and all those things. Um, which I think Hawaii is in the forefront in those kind of things. They probably have some kind of contemporary contextualize matters in terms of their culture. It seems that they also have a blend of other races, eh? That's what we
Definitely.
can say about Hawaii.
Yeah, definitely. That's what I did notice out there. Now, I'm always looking for the indigenous peoples wherever they go. And I could see people like, obviously you got your Americans there, you got your Japanese there, a lot of Japanese,
Yes,
Chinese
yes,
as well, Koreans, I've
yes.
seen like Filipino type people, just all, but then they only seen tiny minority of the indigenous Hawaiian people. But then again, I understand that there's certain areas where they will live more so because I was in Honolulu, that's what I visited. But you've got other areas where, you know,
So are they are they indigenous Melanesians or Polynesians?
they consider them as Polynesians. That's what
Yeah,
now
yeah,
when that's what the
exactly,
when they
exactly.
say they didn't consider themselves as that, this is something that Europeans decided to say, call people Polynesians, Melanesians, and
Mm.
Micronesians. And supposedly the reasons they did it, they say Melanesian meaning the Black Islands and Polynesian meaning the many islands and Micronesia, the small islands. So they've this is a European concept. And also what they tried to do is also separate the Polynesians from the Melanesians. And they kind of like put the Micronesians and the Polynesians in a different category, like as if they're a different race. These came from Asia, Taiwan, China, and Southeast Asia area, then
So
come
we we
into
we we see how we see the how the Europeans have really influenced the world. Eh?
they have.
They have on some occasions we see that they have supported uh, you know some races. On many occasions, they have really disturbed our setup. Say, for example, here in Fiji, in the name of safeguarding the indigenous people, they brought in the Indians through the indentured labor system to
Yeah.
work on the sugarcane fields, so that the indigenous people, referred to as the Itoke, they remain in their villages and they maintain their cultural setup. They maintain their obligations in the traditional means, and then they went on with the black birding exercise. They disturbed the Solomon Islanders. They disturbed the people of Vanuatu. They brought them across as slaves. These are some of the things that I just don't know. There was no such power during that time, James. And the Europeans had really disturbed, the influence throughout the world was so immense, um, that as an indigenous people, uh, even in my opinion, I still feel that we were really trapped during those years, that time, that we were powerless to defend ourselves as the original indigenous peoples of the world.
Well, it's down to also weaponry as well. If they come in with guns and you don't have guns, then that's basically how they were able to defeat people,
Yes,
weaponry,
yes,
you
exactly,
know. So
exactly.
now I think what it is as well is that I think most
Th-
indigenous
There was a
people,
situation in
yeah,
Fiji when chiefs when a chief was supposedly superior or became superior over time than the others, they had to take Europeans that came earlier on and had guns to be the in Fiji's history we had Charles Savage. You know, they had to cling on to certain Europeans who had guns and all, and became their advisors, because they had guns, like what you said.
Yeah, that's it. And another thing, what it is, you see, it's a multiple different things. You see, it's one, obviously, it's weapons, and two, it's also when it comes to warfare, Europeans will go that step further. They'll go that step further to try to win the war. They don't care who dies, how many dies, what
Yeah,
weapons
yeah,
dropped up, like in Japan. You know, many, they don't care. They don't care.
they don't care.
So
They
when you've
don't
got
care.
that attitude, that is like how people seem to win the war. They just don't care how many die, who they've got to kill. If you've got to sacrifice their own, but that's their mentality. And to be honest, that mentality goes back to what they call the Ice Age, because
I
during
mean,
these times
what
they were
was
living hard.
what was really in there with the black people, James,
They
with us,
feared
the
us.
indigenous peoples of the world? What
Yeah.
was really in there that they were going after? That is something I always ask.
No, don't get me
You know?
wrong. I mean, one thing is always resources, of course, and stealing the land and them things, but it's an um, inferior set of people, basically, inferiority, and they only fear the black planet. I mean, I don't think this is a new thing. I believe this is even something that is an old thing because you can look through history, you can look through records, and my main focus was always on indigenous peoples. So we start from Africa, civilizations and merging around the world with African influence strongly, on a lot of places. But I think what's
Okay,
happened
James,
is yeah,
on record,
yeah, and
where on earth,
yeah.
where on earth have these Europeans, or are these Europeans the original people of? Where on earth
Well, this is
are they? Come again?
this is a very interesting question you just asked. Then, do you know why? Because there's a lot of people asking this same question. So basically, did they come from Africa? Like, basically, I mean, whether or not they did or not, basically, the whole planet is a black planet, indigenous peoples.
That's
When they,
that is what I have.
yeah, so
That's what I've
now,
always thought.
when people
That,
spread around the planet, people are still black for a
yes.
period of time, a
So
long
I've
period of
always
time.
wondered where on earth, looking around the globe,
Yeah.
looking at all the places around the world, I've always thought, where on earth are these people?
So,
They are the original, the indigenous people of,
yeah,
these
yeah.
Europeans, it's these whites,
So
because they,
supposedly, there's actually many stories of this, and I'm not a person who will just jump on one story or one truth. I'll look at multiple different things, and I give an example. With new technology, people can see how long, like they did something in Britain, Cheddar Man, it was called, and it was the oldest person in Britain. Like, well, people around 10,000 years ago, this Cheddar Man was. And this was clearly a black person. They said his eyes was blue or red. Doesn't matter if it was or not, you know what I mean? But so anyway, this proves that black people in Britain still 10,000 years ago. Now, whether or not they say he came from Spain, Africa, it's besides the point. It's older than the modern people of today who were in Britain. So when that came out, and then there's other people who do a lot of research where they seen that when did white skin appear, and it's supposedly very recent, like 6,000 years ago. So then you look and think, well, where were these 6,000 years ago? And people place them in places like the Caucasus Mountains. So people say the word Caucasian from the Caucasus
yes.
Mountains. That's where the
Mhm.
Caucasian name come from. So the Caucasus Mountains, Russia, around this west, you could consider as like kind of Western Asia also,
Yeah.
so, and then eventually um, migrated out from places like Ukraine, Caucasus, Central Asia, and they really sprang out and took over Europe because there were still black people in Britain during these time
Exactly.
before they got there. So they must have came and in armies and must have overran. Well, usually what happens is overran, slaved them into bread, and then usually they rape the women and them type of
You
things.
just see how the those the group of Europeans. Well, the history tells us, and it's also on record. These Europeans, a handful of Europeans whom they say in history that they often go against the monarchy, the British monarchy, and they were sent out. They were sent out. They came as far as Australia. Just imagine how they pushed the Aboriginals out of how they pushed them around, and they become completely, almost completely disturbed. So lucky that the nations of the world, got together, and then they are quite recognized now to some degree. The indigenous of New Zealand, the Maoris,
Yeah.
just see how they came in, and luckily the Treaty of Waitangi had safeguarded them. Um, I'm just sometimes I sit and think of these people and how they have disturbed the indigenous peoples of the world, the original peoples of the world. It's really very disturbing, and I'm just of the view, James, that we are quite late. There need to be something to be done. We need to do something to reconnect us as quickly as possible, so that to build up our solidarity, so that we get to that level, because they are very much um, advanced in everything. Yeah.
Yeah, well, this is why it's very important to study and study about an indigenous peoples is very important because as a person who likes to travel or anybody who likes to travel, traveling's a brilliant thing. But one thing when you travel, it's important to, if you happen to land in a certain country and it's being conquered by Europeans or whoever, then it's still great to go and try to see the last of these indigenous peoples that are there, whether it's going to the museums, whether it's,
You see, I traveled I
secluded
traveled
areas, you have to
to
find them. And
I traveled to New Zealand in 2023. I think in the month of March, I was in New Zealand. At that time, I was the principal advisor to the Minister for Education in Fiji. Um, and I went with the Minister for Education to New Zealand, and the acting permanent secretary at the time. While in New Zealand, we went. Well, it was we went for the Council of Pacific Ministers meeting. Um, because I was the advisor to the minister then, that's why I had to be part of the party delegation to New Zealand. And when we were in New Zealand, we went to the Manukau Institute for Indigenous Affairs. It belonged to the Maoris, and they were well established. Um, my point is this: there are many Pacific Island states. They have nothing such as that in their island states. To really advocate and safeguard the indigenous cause. Like for us here in Fiji, there is no institute for indigenous studies. There is no institute. Like the Maoris, they have Manukau and there are others. That's why I was sharing, James, of the need to have an Indigenous Language Act, the need to have an indigenous, an act for the indigenous people, where they could also have a commission, an established commission. It is what I'm trying to say is this: the need for support for us indigenous people around the world to support each other and finance advocacy awareness issues so that these kinds of things are quickened, are considered to be important, and we push it because we need pushers and shakers, for the indigenous cause.
Yeah, that's it. And at the end of the day, as we speak on indigenous, we're speaking on also original peoples. So with original peoples, like we were talking about with the European, he's not original to any part of the world. And this is the lost, it's the lost people, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
where they would like to see the world run like this, they want to go to space and all of the planets and obsessed with places like Antarctica. And so what I mean is you made like indigenous people, as much brilliance and intelligence and wisdom that, and from oral history to um, just brilliance of the indigenous peoples, that's the main thing, is promoting the greatness of the indigenous peoples. It's because from a Western perspective, the indigenous peoples, or say people who live in the forest, or they live in like rural, they don't want to live in the cities. They want to be more independent. They don't like that. They want people to rely on government. You know what I'm saying? Where, as part of being indigenous, is an independent mentality that connects you with all the community and the rest of. It actually connects you to the whole of humanity if you're living the right way, the righteous way. Look at the
Yeah.
Native Americans. Look at the Pacific Islander people, Aborigines, Africans. So all over the world, you'll find that there's where the indigenous peoples are and their beliefs are. You'll always find a connection that links us around the planet, and that's how it's supposed to be. But that balance has been disturbed, and this is where we are today. I mean, like as far as like, where do you see like the future of Fiji from where, if you try and see into things, where things are going?
Frankly, James, the indigenous people, the original people of Fiji, they're very genuine. They're genuine in the sense that they consider, over the years, they have considered other races to be part of them,
Yeah.
and that's how we have survived over time. The beauty about Fiji today is that is its cultural diversity. But then, as you have asked, where do I see the originals, the original peoples, the indigenous people in the future? I feel that there is a lot more to be done in terms of legislations, particularly with the language and culture. If we get to Japan, we get to China, you enter the country, you must first learn their language, you must first learn their culture. If you don't, then because everything is in Chinese, you go to a hotel, you can't uh, bloody talk in the English language because all those people there don't talk in their English language. So why can't we do the same for these island states here in the Pacific? Why are we too considerate, James? That's my point. Why are we too considerate? Because
Yeah.
I just feel that we need to, by our decision at lawmaking level, we just need to consider the fact that we are indigenous and everything must go along as we wish.
Yeah. Well, this is the problem. People, it's a lack of respect for indigenous peoples. And when I say indigenous peoples, Black people around the world. So,
Well, if we do that, it doesn't mean that we disrespect other races. It's
well,
just that they need to consider the fact
yeah,
that, yes, you want to stay in Fiji, you learn about indigenous Fijian culture, indigenous language. That is compulsory. That is how I see it. That the future should hold about Fiji and the indigenous cause. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we have to really learn from history. And I think sometimes that people are very forgetful. So sometimes there's, forgetful and too forgiving. And what I mean by that is people, you look at like, for example, you could look at Japan and America. America did real bad to Japan, but in ways, they still have kind of a relationship there, if you get what I'm saying. People have like a lot of the Japanese Americans marry the women in Japan, live there, and so it's people are very forgetful sometimes. And don't get me wrong, you can't hold people who weren't around at that time accountable for stuff what went on years ago. But at the same time, there's lessons that we need to learn. And I'll just say a few of them which I feel like I stick to certain principles. So I look at like throughout history where there was conquerors, many conquerors, doesn't matter if it was like Genghis Khan, doesn't matter if it was like the Huns, the Greeks, the Romans, the Persians. Conquering's conquering, and what you get a result of conquering, yeah, you get conquered, but at the same time, they are usually there to basically spread their race as well. So basically, they will rape multiple women in these regions. And this is what the British have done, the French have done. This is what the Spanish were doing in the Americas. They just rape as many indigenous peoples. Then when they have child, they come out lighter. So then they try to use the lighter ones as this is like a hierarchy. So what they do, they put the whitest one at the top, the white man. Then they'll keep the mixed ones below him, and then they'll keep the darkest people at the bottom. This is strategies he's done also in Latin America. He's done this in America. He's done it in many places. But because, like I say, I'm well researched into all what he's been doing. So that's why I make sure also that when we're having children, and I like to stick to my own, because I don't want to breed my child out, and then eventually, you're trying to speak about we come from Africa, and they won't even have it. It'll basically wash away.
Yeah, right. I got your point.
It's people's choices who they want to go with, but I prefer to stay with me own. That's, I'm very proud, and I couldn't have nothing different than a black woman. That's me. I mean, a lot of people. I met a lot of people in all over. Sometimes you might disagree with that. Of course, choose who you want to be with, but for me, it's very important to black woman because of my mom's a black woman, my father's a black man, and I want to just pass that lineage on and can keep the African tradition intact as well. Not just be a black man and that's it. Knowing your roots of where you come from, because Europeans would like us to believe you're just a black man and that's it. No, we're black and we're great, and we come from the place where the original peoples come from on this planet. We were the first of civilization, and we paved the way for the rest of civilization around the world. Later on, we were captured into slavery. Not all of us, a lot of us, Africans on the continent suffering colonialism. Same with other places like the Pacific, many black islands, black continents. And this is the result today. But at the same time, though, I still always like to be positive, because, when you want to connect to your spiritual, you got to connect to some sort of positivity. You got to be a bit balanced, to be able to connect. We're the people of the earth. We're true. We're one with nature. This is something that we've never been confused about. And the reason the planet is being destroyed, that's what.
But when we choose to be, but when we choose to be positive, that means definitely there'll be some degree of consideration, right? For the other races.
Yeah. But
For other
positivity,
races that we have lived together with. over time and over the years.
Yeah,
But then the other question is, for how long? For how long will we? Because the indigenous, the originals of the originals, original peoples of the earth, of the world, sorry, they are known to be very considerate people.
yeah,
You agree with me?
yeah. Too considerate
Yes,
sometimes.
yes.
Yeah,
Because so many things have transpired in their country, and they have been they they have been silent about it. They have been suppressed. Um, Much of the development is not in their favor, but God has allowed them to survive. And then come a time, you know, we are Christians now. We believe in a living God. Like in my case, uh, God has allowed us to survive, and no matter how much ill treatment these Europeans do to the indigenous, to the original peoples of the world, they will never ever totally erase the indigenous peoples out of their country of birth and citizenship.
I definitely agree with that. We were here first and we'll be the last. But there's countries that I visit to in Asia where there are pockets of indigenous peoples left. I'll give an example. In Malaysia, I went into the rainforest to meet the Orange Asli tribe. And that Orange Asli means original people as well. So there are so many in the thousands, not thousands, I'd say like a couple of thousand, but they're scattered around. You've got different names like the Tech Tribe, Orange Asli. There's other ones that are kind of like mixtures. So then you got like the Eta in the Philippines, and they live in these mountainous areas, and clearly just like our African people, uh, original people everywhere. Same in Thailand, the Mani tribe. Now in Thailand, there's only 300 of them left. So 300 of them, and the only reason why they are still left is because they are in parts of the jungle, the rainforest, where if they go to live into the cities or live around the rest of the people, what will happen is they'll get absorbed. And this is what happens, and then you become practically extinct. So this is why I think it's important to preserve your culture and your lineage. So preserving the culture, I mean, what's the best ways do you feel that preserving the culture, to keep so people don't forget? So what's some of the solutions that you see?
Well, James, I think for the indigenous peoples around the world, and with reference to Fiji and here in the Pacific, there's a need to the the truth of the matter, and it is an existing issue, is the financing of the programs, financing of ways and means of preserving, um, advocating, raising awareness, moving out to settlements, to the villages, and and innovating new ways of storing knowledge and information, and carrying out, for example, um, chants and traditional dances and all. How can we advocate on it, on them? We need to move out, because there are not many people in the rural settings, rural setup in traditional villages are knowledgeable nowadays of all these traditional dances and chants and poetry, and but while once we have identified, we have some handful of of the people who are left, then we need to innovate ways and means of advocating on this. So maybe teaching and learning, but then all of these requires financing, funds and donors and all those. So that's what's needed right now. Yeah, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, because you've got to express and show the importance of your history. It's so important because when you don't express and feel the need to show your true history, then sometimes, well, the enemy, the conqueror, is always writing everybody's history anyway. So you're going to get it from a Eurocentric perspective if if it's left out. And this is for anybody, they don't. If you don't write your own history, then someone else will, And this is
Yeah,
for
yeah,
any conquerors. They like to impose their religion, their
yeah.
beliefs, their
But we
ideologies.
need, yeah, we need to write our own history. Why should Europeans come and write?
Yeah,
They know nothing. We do it. We do our own history the way we know is the right way of doing it.
yeah.
And we write our own history. Yeah,
It's very important that it is because this is why a lot of indigenous peoples around the world, there's a lack of respect and a lack of knowledge of them, also a lack of ignorance. So the more people that are aware, more conscious, and these are the people of the earth. These are the original people, and there's only so many people who still live the ancient way. And in order to live the ancient way, you have to be isolated from people coming in. And this is what I've kind of figured out myself, where the more isolated you are, the more that you can be intact. You can keep things intact and preserve it more better. Now, this is just the way of the world, unfortunately, where people should respect different cultures and just learn the truth. It's all history, learn it and accept it. But a lot of people need to undermine indigenous peoples from wherever, so they can keep coming in, stealing the resources. And it's like the indigenous people basically are the opposite. They have the opposite way of thinking from the Western perspective. The Western perspective is take more than you need, you know, where it's not like that with indigenous cultures. It's about shared and, it's you're more with nature, you know. So the law of man, the laws of nature, and we can clearly see what the law of man have done. They write religious books, they conquer the planet, they write other people's history for them. And this is like the law of man, the laws of nature. Everything is balanced, like what you see in the ancient Egyptians, the
you
Kemetics. Um,
know, James, in my view, um, talking about indigenous issues of the original peoples of the world, it's okay. Like what we're doing now, we talk about it and we advocate. The podcast is shared around the world, and but the thing is, um, I don't know whether you'll agree with me or not. There is little action,
yeah,
in terms of bilateral cooperation. Countries are just doing their own way of stepping up on indigenous cause. Uh, like for us here in the Pacific, we have the Melanesian Spearhead Group. But how far have they been um, standing for the indigenous people? What projects have they done? What is pending? Right now, it seems that they are sleeping. There's nothing that we have heard from them lately. I don't know whether there is a meeting done for the past 10 years or not. These are government corporations, um, Melanesian countries in the Pacific. They've formed the Melanesian Spearhead Group, but I don't know how far they've gone so far with the, standing together as members of the indigenous peoples communities around the Pacific. And like what I've said, It is all right that we talk about it, we advocate, and we discuss in depth about it. But it's the action part that we still lack,
Yeah,
to really ensure that things happen the way we want it.
yeah. So what are some of the some of the things you think that's holding, what do you say it's called? The Melanesian Spearhead Group? Is that the name?
Yeah,
What do you think's holding it back?
I don't really know because right now there's no news, no information coming from the countries in the Pacific. They've had elections, new governments come in and go, and we don't really know what's happening. At least it comes down to the grassroots level, and we see changes. Or okay, say for example, in Fiji, you have the Fiji Indigenous Institute, you know, and it's being funded by them, something of that sort.
So do you think maybe
But I don't know what's the purpose,
so
what
it could
is the
be
objective of such
do
organization. It's just,
you
it
think
seems
it,
like it's just a waste of time
yeah,
that
in some
they,
ways, I mean, do you think it could be corruption, or do you think it's a case of people giving up because they feel like they're fighting a losing battle?
at least something is done for a group of indigenous people. Okay, say for example, in their strategic plan, Fiji 2025, you will have your Fiji Indigenous Studies Institute established. Here's the funding. Vanuatu, in 2026, you'll have your Fiji Indigenous Studies Institute established. Here's the funding. Here's the budgetary funding. Because all these governments, indigenous Melanesian governments of the Pacific, they they have their grant towards the Melanesian Spearhead Group. Something. I'm just thinking aloud,
So
but
where's the
nothing
headquarters?
of that sort.
Where's
Nothing
the
of that sort, James. Nothing of that sort, James, has happened so far. So it seems like the indigenous, um, our interest and all these things is dying the natural death, in the natural way. So who will do it? Who's gonna make a start at least? I don't know. I don't know. Right now, the
yeah?
situation is such.
So where's the headquarters of the Melanesian Spear Group? Is it PNG?
No, it goes like say for example, Vanuatu maybe having a term to lead, and then it goes on to
Okay,
PNG.
yeah.
Yeah,
See, because
it
the
goes
reason why I
comes to
said
Fiji.
PNG, because
Ca-
if you look at Melanesia, Papua New Guinea looks like, that's the big, massive island. It's the biggest island, isn't it? In the Pacific, is it? Is it Papua New Guinea, the biggest island in the Pacific?
Yeah,
And if you look at Papua New Guinea, it's split kind of, you've got the western part, which the Indonesians are occupying, and they have killed millions of, well, maybe close to 1 million Papuans, so that's just like unbelievable what's been going on there. So I think a lot of people, as like we spoke to Lazard also out in New Caledonia, what's going on there with the Kanak.
yeah. The Kanaks are there,
Yeah.
so I don't know
So,
whether this Melanesian group also include Kanaks, and I think so. But and
mm,
then sometimes when I sit and think about this, and there is less support and action that we see. Um, it's maybe because I am the assistant secretary of an indigenous teachers union and one of the largest teachers union in Fiji. I get really really frustrated when I see less support in the indigenous cause.
another thing is as well, because there's so much problems in a lot of places, caused by the Europeans from colonialism, it seems like a lot of things really stem from. And so it's as people are trying to put together, groups in the Pacific like Melanesia and places like that. So it seems that like what's holding them back also is still being stuck in a state of colonialism. And this is the same problem with Africa, you see, where the colonialism hasn't gone away, even though countries might consider themselves independent. Colonialism doesn't seem to go away unless um, unless you completely do the opposite and keep Fiji and keep your language alive, like you were saying before. These are all things, languages, keeping your culture preserved, passing on this heritage. So because eventually, if things are not passed on, it's gonna get washed away, and this is what happens with a lot of people's history. It gets forgotten about a generation down the line, or it's and this is the importance where we no matter how busy we are, no matter how war torn we are, or whatever type of situation, it's just always about like preserving that culture. That is your connection strongly to your ancestors, your back to your motherland, and that's what it's about in that. But um, I think as the future goes on, there's more people paying attention around the world, I'd say. More people awake, even though you've got a lot of people who are also asleep. But I can see in the future that
Mhm.
it could come from the newer generations, who knows? Who knows who can really impact, so but we have the internet, we have access to numbers of books of great scholars, great researchers, that can we have the researchers in every indigenous land anyway, the chiefs and the historians, which what we've had for a long time. Anytime I travel and I want to learn something about history, I'll always make sure that I'm gonna be amongst the people and like take me where I can learn about the Fijian history or the Tongan history or whatever history. And that's the way I like to do it. I don't just want to go to a country just just live a commercial, just doing what normal tourists do, because I won't come back and learn on. I can't really learn on. I've got to really go out there, even if it's long drives, whatever it takes to
So
meet the
what really
people.
is the what really would be the let me just ask, what really would be the output, the end result, um, of such a healthy communication like what we're doing now. It's a podcast. We and then we send it across, so that we advocate more. Am I right? Advocate more. We tell the the original peoples of the earth, of the world, that this is what we need.
Yeah, and like I say, these are all starting points. Starting points is
Yes,
acknowledgements.
yes,
We must acknowledge. I
yes.
must acknowledge people over in the Fiji Islands, the indigenous peoples.
Right.
Fijians must also acknowledge African peoples and
Yes.
recognize, but not just recognize African peoples only who live in Africa. Recognize the journey that we've all been on when we left Africa. Like people in the Caribbean, and the America taken into slavery of their own will, but they're still African people. Some of them know it, and there's few people who don't know it. You might see people in America who say, Black American might say, I'm not African, I'm American, because that's what he's being taught to know. Not everybody. Then some people in America you might find very conscious, where they say, no, we know our roots as African, even though the nationality is American. So it's history and colonialism, slavery, that's done a real number on us. And the same thing with indentured laborers. When you bring indentured laborers around people, and now you're creating another group now, and it comes like a hierarchy where like the indentured laborers are from India who came to the Fiji Islands. The same, but they came to the Trinidad and Guyana, and also in parts of Africa as well. So they didn't come of their own free will. They were brought by the British, isn't it? You know. So that was just.
Come again?
I'm saying that the Indians that came for indentured labor in Fiji, they didn't just decide to come to Fiji. They were brought.
Yes,
They were
they were
brought.
brought in by the British.
That's what I mean.
They were brought in by the British. Just imagine, well, we hear and we read stories about them that they were told that they would be just be going to a nearby place, and they were not told about the harsh living conditions that they would encounter.
Yeah,
They were not told about having to live in the sugarcane fields. They were not told about, many things that the Europeans would do to them.
yeah.
Um, uh, you know, um, uh, that's things that were really unethical and against, they did not have that human factor. Uh, they were brought in 1879. Fiji got ceded to Great Britain in 1874. Our Indians, brothers and sisters, who came in the ship from India. Just imagine, we look at the world map and we see India on the other end, and they had to travel, were brought right across. What
Yeah,
right? What right did the British government have? Just imagine that. What right did they have to disturb the Indians in their own country of their birth and citizenship, and brought them over to Fiji?
yeah.
And what right did they have to disturb the indigenous, the first people of Fiji, the originals of people of Fiji, and to get them here? We can't blame the Indians. They were just done. Things were done against their will.
Yeah.
And just imagine the amount, the immense amount of ill treatment we hear, we read about how they were brought into Fiji, couples, newlywed couples in India came in the ship, they were separated here, and they had to marry again, different spouse, and they
So can I ask you a question,
the amount of
Micah?
come again?
Can I ask you a question and continue what you're saying, but I want to ask you a question. So when the
Yeah.
Indians came over, were they intermixing with the Fijian people, or was the separate? Were they intermixing some of them?
Well, that was later on. Later on, James, when the indentured system stopped in 1916.
Okay,
Yeah,
1916,
then there
right?
was then there was intermix. There was some slightly, marriages. But during the existence of the British from 1879, while all this indentured system was still on, they were ill-treated. They were
Yeah,
ill-treated. We hear stories. I don't know how many have been written and how much hasn't been written. There were cases of rape in the cane fields, Europeans ill-treating the Indians. There were, uh, you know, there were many. Even the blackbirding,
yeah,
when they brought the Vanuatu people across. That's why the much of them got married quickly to the indigenous communities that they worked nearby,
yeah,
and they did not go back to Vanuatu. They did not go back
right.
to the Solomon Islands.
Yeah,
Um, if there was an international criminal court on the British,
hmm.
I think, I don't know, they they still have a lot to answer to the indigenous peoples of the world.
Yeah, definitely, definitely, Micah. Yeah, definitely, and they owe a lot, and it's not just only the
And
British;
as we
it's also
speak,
the
and
Europeans
as
in
we
general.
speak, James, many things are. have gone under the carpet.
Yeah,
just
that's
just
right.
yeah, many
That's
things have
it.
gone under the carpet, and they are relaxing in their own way. They're back in Britain and wherever they are in now, in America maybe. No one has ever taken them to task. If we
Another
are
thing
to
as
reverse
well.
history,
Yeah. Another thing as well is a lot of leaders as well. It's like a lot of these
if we are
leaders around the world are appointed into power
if we are to
as
reverse
well.
history, James, if we are to reverse history in pictorial form
Yeah,
or in, say, in a video form,
yeah,
just imagine how much ill treatment we would be able to we would watch.
yeah,
If there was some kind of a video taken or video shooting taken on what we've heard and we've read, if we
yeah,
are to reverse history,
yeah.
and someone is answerable for all those.
That's right. It's you know what? Sometimes it can seem like um very difficult to be able to connect with different people to try to make an impact on change. Sometimes it's not as easy as what people think, but what it is, there is like-minded people out there, but you must find them. It's I'm a searcher me, so like it's like me and you having a discussion now. It's about being a searcher. Because I was searching and then I reached your site, and then you're the only one who responded and said, "Yeah, you will have a discussion," and it's taken us to a next level now. And it all starts off from something so simple: communication, a simple
Yeah.
little communication, and also for other people, wherever they are around the world, to see people connecting and actually connecting with indigenous peoples around the world. And they're still out there just for anybody who wants to connect with indigenous peoples. I mean, they're all over the world, but if you want to connect to the most secluded type peoples and get out of the tourist area, you might have to go into sometimes the rainforest. You might have to go into mountainous areas. You might have to go into savannas. I went to see the Maasai tribes in the savannas. Asian tribes in the rainforest, mountainous areas, and that's the only way you can. Because you can read books. That's what we can all do. We can all read books. We can go on the internet,
I only
research,
wish
but we
I
must
only wish we have people
search.
out there who are able, we need to have something like a world symposium or a regional symposium for the Pacific people, or, and there are people out there who are able to fund so that we discuss more and,
And a lot of
and get a
the
thorough.
artifacts, you can go to the British Museum and you'll see a lot of artifacts from all over the world stolen. You know, they need to return these things back. And I'm sure if you go to France, you're going to find a lot of artifacts from around the world, Spain, Greece, whatever, all of Europe, just stealing artifacts. And we have to go into the museum to see exactly what it is that they've stole and know what we're looking at, you know, because everything is like a whitewash. And that's just the way it is because, this is the dominant society who feel like they are ruling. But things change, just as we can see the change of what's happened to indigenous peoples. But let's make the right change. That's what I say anyway. But Michael, anyway, anything that you want to finish up with? Before we finish up on the podcast, anything that you feel that is important?
Yes, James, I'm just looking ahead to the day when, when we are able to connect and turn things into reality, like a real um, uh, cooperation kind of a move, a genuine uh, get together of groups of indigenous people, where we establish offices around the countries that we are connected with. We empower everybody, we empower people, indigenous peoples, so that, and then, we move from country to country where we talk about it, where there's a lot to be done. Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. But I want to thank you very much, Maika Moroca, for your time. This is James Diboe, Discovering, dedicated to original peoples as always. And Maika, I give thanks, and we look forward to the documentary coming out soon as well. Maika will be a part of the Indigenous Peoples documentary soon to come out anyway. But anyway, Maika, give a big thanks, and we'll do this again, and we'll make sure we stay in touch, and we'll do more episodes to come.
Thank you, James. Thank you for the podcast session. Thank you.
Nice one, brother. I really appreciate your time.